Hey everyone! If you're prepping for the CPA exam, you know just how crucial it is to understand that not all CPA services are created equal. So today, we're going to zero in on 3 key types of attestation engagements: examination, review, and agreed-upon procedures. Let's get right into it and break this down so you're ready for exam day.
So, here's our game plan. First up, we'll get a solid handle on what attestation even is. Then, we're going to break down each of the 3 main types, one by one. After that, we'll put them head-to-head to really spotlight the differences. And to finish, we'll cover some super useful memory aids and common exam traps to make sure all this information really sticks.
All right, let's get right into it. First things first, what is an attestation engagement? You know, the big idea here is that we're stepping outside the usual comfort zone of a standard audit of financial statements.
We all know that audits usually focus on historical financial data, right? But what happens when a company needs a CPA's credibility for something totally different? That's really the heart of the matter here. What else can a CPA actually put their professional stamp on?
Okay, so here's the formal textbook definition. But the real key takeaway is this. A CPA is brought in to report on some piece of information that is ultimately somebody else's responsibility, usually the company's management. And we're definitely talking about way more than just your standard financial reports.
And just look at how broad this can be. A CPA could be hired to verify a company's claims about its future performance, or to confirm something totally physical, like the actual square footage of a warehouse. They could even attest to something like the exact price of a certain product on a specific day years ago. The possibilities are pretty vast.
Okay, let's dive into our first type of engagement, the examination. You want to think of this one as the heavy hitter of the group. It's the most thorough, the most rigorous, and it feels the most like a traditional audit. Right off the bat, you can see how closely this mirrors an audit. The level of assurance is high, which we call positive assurance. And to provide that, the CPA has to dig in and gather enough solid evidence to issue a formal opinion in their final report.
And that opinion uses really strong direct language, just like the quote here says. The CPA is making a confident, definitive statement, giving that positive assurance that, from their professional viewpoint, the information is presented fairly. It sounds almost identical to a standard audit opinion, doesn't it?
All right, let's look at our next engagement, the review. So, if an examination is the heavy hitter, think of a review as the middle ground. It's not nearly as intensive, which means it provides a lower or limited level of assurance. Now, the goal here is totally different. With a review, the CPA isn't trying to say, yes, this is correct. Instead, they're basically looking to see if anything seems obviously incorrect. The question they're answering is, based on my work, am I aware of any big changes that need to be made? So for a review, the key things you absolutely have to remember are a limited level of assurance, which we call negative assurance, and the final report gives a conclusion, not a full-blown opinion. And this is what negative assurance sounds like in practice. Instead of saying, it is presented fairly, the CPA says, nothing came to our attention that suggests it isn't. It's a really subtle but incredibly important difference in the wording and what it means for the level of assurance. And finally, we have agreed upon procedures, or AUPs. Now, this engagement is really in a class of its own. Why? Because it provides absolutely no assurance whatsoever. It's a completely different kind of service. Think of it this way. The client and the CPA sit down and create a very specific to-do list. The CPA's only job is to perform those exact procedures and report back on what they found. That's it. No opinion, no conclusion, just the facts. So let's be crystal clear here. Zero assurance. The so-called evidence is literally just the results of the steps they performed. And the report is nothing more than a list that says, we did this, and here's what we found. Period. Okay, now for the main event. Let's put all 3 of these side by side to really hammer home how they stack up. Honestly, this comparison is probably the single most important part for your exam. This table just lays it all out perfectly, doesn't it? You can see that beautiful, clear step down in the level of assurance. It goes from high to limited all the way down to none. And the type of report follows that exact same pattern: opinion, conclusion, and then just findings. Now here's a key point for the exam. Notice that independence is required for all 3. But that last row, that's a huge trap. You need that written accession from management for an examination and review, but not for an AUP. Remember that. All right, let's wrap this up with a couple of key takeaways to help you lock this stuff in for exam day. We'll start with a really simple memory tool.
You know, sometimes the simplest little mnemonic device can make all the difference in the world when you're under pressure trying to remember these details.
And here it is. It's super simple. OCF. Examinations give an opinion, reviews give a conclusion, and AUPs give findings. OCF. Just drill that into your brain. It's a super easy way to keep the 3 different report types straight.
Okay, let's walk through a classic exam-style trap question. Picture this. You're in the middle of an engagement, and management suddenly refuses to give you that required written assertion. What's the right call? What do you do?
And here's why knowing these rules inside and out is so critical. For an examination or a review, that refusal is a complete deal breaker. You have to withdraw from the engagement. But for an AUP, it's no big deal, because you never needed that written assertion in the first place. That is a massive distinction, and it makes for a perfect exam question. So, I'll leave you with one final question to think about. Which of these reports puts the most responsibility on the shoulders of the person reading it to draw their own conclusions? If you can answer that, you'll really cement your understanding of assurance. That's all for this one. Good luck with your studies.